salespeople lose £500,000 every year without even realising it. Imagine this. Last month, I watched a salesman lose over £40,000. And that wasn't because his product was too expensive, and it wasn't because a competitor undercut him, and it wasn't because the customer couldn't afford it. He lost it because of one sentence that most salespeople use every single day. The strange thing is, he walked away convinced he'd had a good appointment. The customer smiled, they thanked him, they shook his hand, that they would be back in touch. And then they went and bought from somebody else. Today, I'm going to show you exactly where that sale was lost. Because if you're in the home improvement industry doing windows, doors, kitchens, bathrooms, extensions, conservatory roofs, conservatories, or anything in between where you're sitting in front of your customers, there's a very good chance you're making exactly the same mistake. And the scary part, nobody's ever pointed it out to you. I've been selling for over 45 years. I've owned successful home improvement companies and still do. I've sold millions of pounds worth of projects. And now I spend my time coaching other business owners and salespeople who are already good but know they could be exceptional elite closers. The one thing has become obvious. The difference between someone closing 30% and closing 70% is almost never the product or product knowledge. It's almost never confidence, and it's certainly not because they're natural or better salespeople. It's because they understand something that most salespeople completely miss or don't understand. And today I'm going to show you exactly what that is. Let me tell you about one of my clients. He's been selling for almost 30 years. Very experienced, very knowledgeable. Customers love him. He was closing roughly 1 in every 2 appointments. Now, most companies would look at that and think, that's a good salesperson. And he thought exactly the same. He was very skeptical. His boss thought exactly the same. But let's look at his numbers. 30 appointments per month, closing 15. Average order value, £10,000. Now that sounds impressive. £150,000 worth of business per month. However, let's look at what he's leaving on the table. Another £150,000 every single month. Now, imagine increasing his conversations so that he closes from 50% to just 65% without spending another penny on advertising, without generating another lead, and without increasing his prices. That's hundreds of thousands of pounds every year. That's what interested me. Not how good he was, but how much money he was unknowingly leaving on the table for his competitors. So, I listened to one of his appointments. Within just 7 minutes, I knew exactly why he wasn't closing more business. It wasn't when he presented the quote. It wasn't when the customer said, we need to think about it. It wasn't even at the end. It happened almost immediately. Let me show you. Customer says, we're just getting a few ideas today. Salesman smiles and replies, that's absolutely fine. Let me tell you a little bit about our company. Stop. Did you hear that? One sentence changed the entire direction of the conversation. Now, most people watching this won't think there's too much wrong with that. In fact, it sounds polite, it sounds professional, it sounds like he's trying to help. But that's exactly why that statement is so dangerous. Because the customer's just told you why they're there. And instead of exploring it, you started talking about yourself, your company, and your product. Here's a question. What do customers actually care about? Now think about that for a second. Not what you wish they cared about. What do they genuinely care about? Do they care about how many awards you've won? Not really. Do they care about you've been trading for 30 years? Only if it helps them. Do they care about your Trustpilot reviews? No. Do they care about your Checker Trade reviews? No. Do they care about your installation process? Again, only if it solves their problem. Customers are only interested in one thing: themselves, their house, their worries, their money, their family, and their future. Everything else is secondary. And the biggest mistake salespeople make is trying to become interesting instead of becoming interested. I'll say that again. Some salespeople want to become interesting rather than become interested. And this is where nearly every sales conversation goes wrong. The customer arrives with questions. The salesperson arrives with answers, and they completely miss each other. Instead, you need to slow everything down. Become curious. Find out why they've invited you into their home. Not what they want, but why they want it. Those are two completely different conversations. Now, here's something that I say that usually upsets salespeople. I don't believe objections exist. I know that sounds ridiculous because you've probably heard 1,000 times, it's too expensive, we're getting more quotes, we need to think about it, my partner likes to sleep on it. Those aren't objections, they're symptoms. Think of it like going to a doctor. You walk into the doctor with a headache. The headache isn't the disease. The headache is the evidence that something is going on underneath. And sales objections work in exactly the same way. By the time someone says, we need to think about it, my wife likes to sleep on it, the sale has already been lost. You're simply hearing the symptom. The real problem happened 20 or 30 minutes before. One of my coaching clients rang me just a few days ago. He didn't even say hello. He just started singing, I just called to say I love you. And he actually sang virtually the whole song. Now, I couldn't stop laughing. Then he explained why. Before we started working together, he was closing around 1 in every 2 appointments. After only a couple of coaching sessions, he had 33 appointments and closed 27. Now, was that because I taught him some magical closing technique? No. Was it because we fixed everything before the close? We changed how we framed the conversations. We changed the questions he asked and how he asked them. We changed how he uncovered the motivation. We changed how he prevented objections before they even appear. The close almost takes care of itself. This is probably the biggest misconception in sales. People obsess over closing techniques. In reality, closing represents just a final few percent of the conversation. The other 90% determines whether the close even becomes necessary. Think about building a house. If the foundations are wrong, it doesn't matter what the structure looks like, doesn't matter how the structure feels and how wonderful the roof is. Sales work exactly the same way. The conversation must be built on the foundation. You frame the conversation, you discover the real reason they're buying, and then you sell the gap between where they are today and where they want to be tomorrow. Only then do you present your solution. Then you deal with the concerns before they become objections. And then you naturally close. And finally, once you've closed, you consolidate the decision. And if you miss any one of those steps, you're making your own life much harder than it needs to be. Here's my challenge to you. Over the next 7 days, record every sales appointment you go on. Listen back to it and count how many genuine questions you ask before you start talking about your product, your solution, or your company. Not polite questions, real questions, questions that uncover emotion, questions that reveal motivation, questions that help you to understand exactly why that customer invited you into their home. Then come back here and tell me your number in the comments. I read every single one of them, because I promise you this, if you're speaking more than you're listening, if you're presenting before diagnosing, if you're trying to convince instead of understand, you're almost certainly leaving hundreds of thousands of pounds on the table every year. And that's not because you're a bad salesperson, but just because nobody has ever shown you a better way. If this video makes you think differently about your sales, subscribe. Every week I'll break down real sales conversations, real mistakes, and real client transformations. So you can stop losing sales. You should already be winning. I'll see you on the next video.